All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's so great to see such a big group here today. Really excited for you to be here. As Phyllis mentioned, my name is Lauren Hanahan. I'm a newly early childhood teacher at the college school in St. Louis, but I have some history with grades now pre-K through 8th grade. With different arts integration strategies and techniques. And I'm just so excited to be here and be a part of this and get to know all of you. This is an environment where we encourage conversation and dialogue and reflection. And so really, please feel free to have your cameras on. Since it is recorded though, if you want to keep your camera off, we totally allow that as well. Please do what makes you comfortable. To get us going, since we have there's a lot of new faces here that I haven't seen before, if you could just drop in the chat really fast, your name, if you want to add your email, we can get you on our email list and any other notifications about other events. And I'm also just kind of curious what inspired you to join today and be here today. I heard a couple had some surprise snow days today. Me too. It was a lovely little early wake up call to have that. And we're so glad that you are ending your day with us here today. So yeah, if you want to drop in the chat so you can quickly kind of get a feel for who all's joining us today. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love hearing that there's like conversations happening and connections being made that are bringing new friends, new faces here. And a nice big broad range of educators and others. Great. Well, wonderful. I keep dropping those in there. As we start, I always just like to preface any kind of meeting space to just build a brave space for us to be, and just acknowledge that we will do our best to make everybody feel safe, but obviously can't guarantee that. So today, as we're working, I just ask that you be present. I know it's really hard with being on our computers, seeing emails pop up, cell phones close by, but just recognizing that, we have an hour together, and we're hoping that in that, that you're open as well and find that little golden nugget that works for you. It's okay if everybody walks away with something a little bit differently, but we hope you find something here that you can walk away with today. And lastly, I just ask you to engage. Please feel free to use the chat at any point. You are welcome to be unmuted and share things out as they come. Also have our hand raise feature too, if you want to use that, and we can, I'll probably recruit Phyllis to help me keep an eye on any chats or hands that go up throughout our conversation today. But looking forward to a great conversation. Before we get going, just a couple housekeeping things. I want to let you know of all the great opportunities for professional learning happening within the state. So here are just a few partnerships and information you can find directed on our website if you're looking for more opportunities. Specifically with us, there are several different free professional learning communities that I hope you can engage in. Missouri Arts Integration Network, you're here today and we're so excited about that. But we're constantly hoping to continue to grow and develop this network more. The more brain power we have and the more conversations we can start, I just feel like we can make a huge impact, and I'm really thrilled about that. So let your friends know. Next, we have our FAME group for our fine arts teachers and our IDEA for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, all of that can be found on our website. You're always able to reach out to Phyllis or myself to get more information there as well. Coming up on February 7th, though, is the next FAME meeting. Adina Varner from the Repertory Theater will be there. So that's going to be really exciting and interesting, and hope that you can join us. Next, as Phyllis mentioned, we are recruiting schools right now for the Arts-Centered Education Program sponsored by the Missouri Arts Council. So if you know of anybody that would be interested in talking with us, we would love to build those connections and share the power and promote arts integration in rural schools in Missouri. Lastly, our mission is to support, promote, and advocate on behalf of arts education. So we invite you to join us as an ally either independently or as an organization. And really, we just use that word as somebody who supports arts and education. So there's lots of ways that you can help. Being here and being part of this conversation is one of them. And we appreciate you being there and doing that. All right. Teaching through the arts is a huge piece that I'm extremely passionate about and have been doing for the last 12 years. It empowers teachers, it supports educational standards, engages diverse learners, balances arts and non-arts subjects, and can be done in a variety of different ways. And so we're always looking at all the ways that you can integrate arts within your curriculum and the benefits of those. I would love for us to start with a quick little warm up here. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, I ask that you just draw a line straight down the middle. We're going to make 2 columns. Give you a second to grab that. This is an activity called Looking 5 by 2. I had a different image in there, but then after looking out my window and seeing the snow, thought this would be a more appropriate one for us to look at today. So what I'd like you to do on the left side of your column, I want you just to take some time to engage and look closely at this image here and let your eyes just kind of wander around. And as they are, list 5 words or phrases that kind of pop into your brain as you're looking. So you may notice some colors, you may notice shapes. There may be a particular section that you're drawn to and you see something there. So just take about 30 seconds right now to think, what do I see? Take about 10 more seconds. Great. Would anybody like to share something they noticed looking closely at this picture?
I wrote down hustle bustle, lots of activity.
I wrote that too, and then I asked myself, well, how do we achieve that hustle bustle? And I determined that it's through the repetition of a variety of different shapes and forms, all just kind of jumbled together to create a certain kind of pattern and order.
I was really drawn to the red coat in the foreground.
My eye kept going to all the boxes in the middle ground. And I kept thinking, seeing that wagon wheel made me think there should be a horse in front, but I couldn't see it until I could just see the horse going the other direction.
I see in our chat too, someone mentioned it looks like it's in the 1920s, lots of billboards. I'm going to invite you now on the right side of your paper to take another 30 seconds and look even more closely and see if you can come up with 5 new words or phrases of things that you notice that are different than what you saw the first time. So take another 30 seconds. About 10 more seconds. If you're ready and you'd like to start sharing in the chat, feel free. Or if you'd like to share out your thoughts this second round.
Someone earlier mentioned the reds, well, the red, the woman in the foreground, but that red is echoed in a building in the background. But then there's all these greens that kind of move in a circular way throughout the painting and take us right back to that red again.
Interesting.
I noticed, despite being an urban scene, there are pieces of nature. There's trees toward the back on the left. There's the sky that we can see clouds. There's snow on the ground. I hadn't noticed the natural elements before.
In the chat, I'm seeing clouds, multiple sizes of buildings. All the people have different body facing, smokiness, washed colors, a sign in the background that says blood, gloomy, shadows. Wow, excellent. So how did this activity feel as you participated in it? What's something you noticed within yourself during this activity?
I wanted to get closer to the image. I felt constricted that I couldn't get in deeply enough because I felt like there was so much to see.
To me, it felt like an invitation to just stop and slow down and just kind of feast my eyes for a minute.
Yeah, to focus, concentrate.
And you begin to wonder if the artist actually intended all of these things that we noticed, these, this movement and this rhythm and how they all kind of like work together, and how if he deliberately thought of it, or if it all is just an intuitive response.
Mm-hmm. Oops, absolutely. Just a couple of sorry.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's the first moment that I've had that is just quiet, focused, and centered all day.
Yeah, I was going to read some of the responses from the chat. Therapeutic, felt like I was playing spy, made me dive deep. I felt like I was actually interacting. I could interact with the painting. So this, like I said, this routine is called Looking 5 by 2. It's also called Looking 10 by 2 as well. So you could do an extended list if you wanted, but it really is just an opportunity to help students slow down and make careful, detailed observations about what they're looking at, and encourages them to push beyond those first impressions. So if you notice, like as we were talking on your left side, a lot of things were probably like colors you saw, or I see people, I see a horse, I see boxes, I see buildings. And then at the second round, we were finding those more finite details. Oh, I'm noticing there's a circular pattern of greens that are maybe drawing us back to this person in red, or, the signs in the background, like, do those have some kind of connection to this painting and this story and this understanding? So it really helps you kind of make those initial impressions, and then provides an opportunity for you to go back and dig a little bit deeper. So this is a great, as you know, it took us 5 minutes maybe, but it's a great way to kind of draw students in, like a writing activity would be a great way to kind of preface with a piece of artwork or a sculpture or anything that you want to connect, and helps kind of develop that descriptive language. And really, like you said, it's just that kind of calming moment to get you to just kind of stop and look and think and wonder. And so that's just one little activity I wanted to share with you that's going to lead us into our next slide, which is going to be a quick little discussion prompt to set us up for the work that Marilyn's going to share with us today. I would love, Phyllis, what do you think? Should we do a breakout? You think we're good in the whole group? I'm curious your thought on this number.
The magic number has been 12, that we could stay in a group. If it was under 12 and over, breakouts seem to be preferred.
Okay.
So would you like us to be in 4 different breakout groups or 5 different breakouts?
I would even say, could we do 3?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to drop in the chat a link to a Jamboard that's going to have this question. And as we break out into these sessions and you're having conversations with your group, I would welcome you to insert a Post-it or a text box to kind of share out what the conversation was within your group. I'll just show you really quick. This is what the Jamboard will look like as you click it. There are some tabs over here on the left. So there's a Post-it note right here where you could say, you know, sample text. This is what we were thinking. And then you just hit save and it will kind of just drop it in there. That's one option. Or there's a text box here. You can also just insert your text there. So as we break out, we'll be talking about how we can help students experience art in different and more personal ways.
Opening the rooms. And I think everybody's back, Lauren.
Welcome back, everybody. So before we jump into Marilyn and her work and what she's going to share, would anybody from groups 1, 2, or 3 like to share out what you talked about in your breakouts? How can we help students experience art in different and more personal ways?
Nobody's talking. So I will. I think our group decided that we could use poetry. We could use some kind of movement exercise, like a tableau, to try and figure out what's the meaning is behind the painting, and then actually experimenting with various art making materials. That's what we talked about.
Thank you, group 3. Group 2 was Adeline, Michelle, Nixon, Rachel, and Roger.
Yeah, we talked about a few different things. Addie from our group just posted in the chat. We talked about allowing students to experience different medium of art. It's not just kind of going to the draw picture all the time, but just how do we move our bodies? How do we express through music? I was thinking about even our warm up this morning. I love the 5x2 and the thinking about, or this afternoon. I don't know what time it is. But when we got on, and I love thinking about how do we make even that a personal experience? Where do we see ourselves in this picture? What connects for us? What does it say about our identity as we look at something and what strikes us? And then we talked a lot about creativity being so important for teachers to foster in themselves. How do we have that identity connection to art in front of our students and alongside our students?
And group 1 was Joan, Julia, Lauren, Lindsay, and Mia.
Yeah, we talked a little bit also about poetry and how you can use that. And we talked about a specific example in Rachel's arts integration class. And just a simple question, where am I from? Rather than having students kind of give a simple answer, making it abstract and allowing students to think of different ways that they can kind of express that. And then also just tying in students' cultures and what they're interested in so that the art and the learning isn't superficial and they feel like it's a part of what they want to do and they're interested in it.
Great. I hope you guys really enjoyed all your conversations together. I know we had a lot to say in our group, and thank you for sharing out. But that's going to lead us right into our guest today, Marilyn Young, who's going to share her experiences of connecting the spheres of art and poetry to enhance teaching English language arts. So I think, Phyllis, are you going to share? Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to spend a few minutes. Wow, that is an arresting picture, isn't it? Talking about something I've done in my high school English classroom as a way to just expose students to more art. We've done what is known as ekphrastic poetry, and you can advance the slide, Phyllis. And it's ekphrastis is Greek for to describe. You can write a poem that describes your reaction to artwork of any kind. This is actually like the presentation I use with students to like show them or introduce the topic to them. Ekphrastic poetry is super creative, and kids enjoy creating their own poetry that reveals their own reaction to artwork. I've always made the requirements really loose. If they want to rhyme, go for it, but definitely I don't want them to feel constrained by that. Because it's more of a low stakes creative writing type of project. And we also can inject humor into it too. So that's something that they kind of are surprised with. To preface ekphrastic poetry for them, I usually go over a classic poem, Ode on a Grecian Urn. And I don't spend a lot of time with this because this will turn them off real fast because it's, romantic era poetry. And but it is kind of the standard bearer for the form. And you can advance to the next slide, which actually shows the poem, Ode on a Grecian Urn. And like I said, it's something we just touch on, and then I move on to the next piece, which is, I can't think what's going to be here. Oh, The Dance by Peter Bruegel, the elder. This is a poem on the poem that describes this painting is on the next slide. And it's fairly short. It's by William Carlos Williams. And he literally describes the action in the painting. And I like this one to show to students because sometimes I don't know what to do with the idea of writing a poem. And then I throw in this really weird kind of poetry called ekphrastic poetry, and then they're even more intimidated. And so this is a good example of what you can do with an ekphrastic poem is just describe what you see. It can be that simple. And on the next slide, I think I have some, oh, this is my humorous example. It's American Gothic. If you look at the last couple of stanzas, that's kind of the more or less the punchline. This poem describes the shapes, the lines, the content of the painting, but then it takes a little twist at the end where it talks about the woman as she stares off into the horizon. She's wondering if she turned off the stove. So there's this little surprise of humor at the end. So I let kids know that they can be funny with their poetry too. So this is just a basic definition from the Poetry Foundation. An ekphrastic poem is a vivid description of a scene or a work of art through the imaginative act of narrating and reflecting on the action of a painting or sculpture. The poet may amplify and expand its meaning. So it's just an interesting way to get kids in my English classroom interacting with art. And also in an art classroom, you can connect the spheres and pull in the English language arts activities too. You can offer student choice with ekphrastic poetry, having them choose their own artwork. And I've done both. Usually we get into it by we all respond to one common artwork, and that was this Frida Kahlo self-portrait. That was the first time when I did this the first time, we all wrote a poem based on that. And then we segued into choosing their own artwork. So you can do it either way or both ways. I would imagine if you're an art teacher and you're studying a specific artist, maybe, everyone focusing on one piece of art from that artist, or maybe students choosing different pieces by the same artist. Here was an example. A student wrote, an 11th grader, on this painting. This was the painting she chose to write about. I probably put like a 15 to 20 line guideline for them to help them know, because that's always the first question, is how long does it need to be? And so it looks like I went with like 15 to 20 lines maybe. But this is the one where she's kind of getting creative with what she sees in the picture. What a jumbled mess, you think at first sight. But once you pick apart the similar homes made up for lungs, for intestines, a wooden floor with curtain drapes, and the homey background, once you pull back the cherry drapes, you'll see the truth. What a jumble, a mess, a masked man covering up. But what is he hiding? A harp in hand and a house and heart, for this is he. And what's fun is I remember who wrote this, and it's so fun to see kids choose artwork that connects to them, because that is exactly what I would have expected patients to find to write about. On the next slide, there's another George Bellows painting. One of my 11th grade boys who was like, what? We have to write poetry about art? Just completely outside of his wheelhouse. And he ended up enjoying it a lot and writing a lot about it. So student choice is huge with this, because it can really connect them to art in ways they've never thought of before, or just getting them to interact with it. I think I have another one that involves music. I had a student find a piece of from an opera, and then she wrote this poem about the opera. And I was just like, wow, I didn't even tell them, go outside the visual arts if you want to. And she took that idea and ran with it. So it can be so diverse as to what they like to choose or to focus on for their project. On the
Marilyn,
next,
I can't tell for sure but it looks like this might be an active link. Did you want them to hear Any of course?
None particularly, but it's up to you. I mean, it's just it's an Italian operatic little excerpt
Okay.
without subtitles. And then I give 2 tips for them. Use lots of precise adjectives. I don't want just a lot of adjectives thrown in there, but I want them to be specific. Describe the artwork's elements as accurately, as fully, and as personally as possible. I work in some vocabulary by having them learn about the word kinetic. It's fun to incorporate movement and sound into a poem if you can see that action in the artwork. So on the next slide, there's a picture of the slave ship. That's a good example that with this little piece of text at the bottom by John Ruskin, I kind of highlighted the kinetic words in there to clue kids into what that word means and to encourage them to try to include some movement in their description. And this paragraph also, if you've got kids who are a little bit not sure how to get into the poem, they can just write a paragraph and then pull words and phrases out of that paragraph to craft their poem. So that's kind of another way into a poem for some kids who aren't familiar with doing that, or just are uncomfortable or intimidated by it. I have them find artwork on Google Arts and Culture, and then attempt to find another, because you can't download from Google Arts and Culture. But then I like them to nose around on that site and then download an image of it if it's available from Wikimedia Commons. So I encourage them to go with all kinds of media, ceramics, wood, glass, prints, whatever. I think that might be. Oh, and then I follow up with just another little final slide. I usually leave this on the board as they work or as they search for artwork, just to remind them of the project. Anyway, it's a fun project, and I probably end up doing it once or twice a semester with juniors and seniors. And everybody seems to really like it. And that's my presentation.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I have like Post-it notes just like all over my my desk right now, things that were popping in my head as you were sharing. But I would also love to hear some thoughts from the group too about reflections they had in the moment, and if they've done something like this, if they have an opportunity coming up to try it. Yeah, I'd just love to hear from everybody.
Well, I'll start. I like that it feels so accessible. It's like there's an entry point for everyone, even the reluctant young gentleman who felt like he didn't.
Yeah. Poetry and art. Are you kidding me? But finding that particular painting, that finding that piece that really spoke to him, that took care of it for him.
What grades are you using this?
Juniors and seniors.
And they do take an end of course exam, right?
No, actually mine did not. No.
Oh, they do not. Okay.
No.
Marilyn, one of the things I liked about this was that with this type of them putting themselves on the line, it introduces in a pretty safe way them having to deal with some of their own vulnerability. How much are they willing to risk with the words that they choose? But it also is something that the more they do of it, then that trust can be built up kind of within the trust within the room that you've created as the teacher, the trust amongst the other writers in the room, but then their trust with themselves to say, that went pretty good, let me try this, or that was pretty disastrous, let me make some edits and see if I can't change this. But I feel like the project sets up for success, knowing that it may push some buttons of uncomfortableness, but I'm also going to lead you through it, and there's some pretty good guides along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, if you introduce it, I mean, it's such a I don't know, I tend to have a pretty relaxed classroom. And so being able to, we move the chairs around and we get into groups and they can sit wherever they want. And it ends up having a very comfortable feel to the class. And so presenting their work has always been, once we get to the end of the project, they're so interested in what each other has found and has written about that it's like a what am I trying to say? It's interesting. It's like a window into their classmates and what they all like to see and like to respond to, and the way they phrase their work, their words.
I think this could also be used even in middle levels of 7 and 8, but I'm going to sure put some more guide rails up around it. We're going to go for 2 sentences when we start today, and next week we're going to work for 6, and then maybe we're going to work for 10. I'm going to choose the pictures the first time. The second time you can choose a picture from an envelope I've provided, or now I'm going to really turn you loose. But I think it still is doable younger. You just have to have some safety rails up around it, like you're taking them to the ice rink, get their little walker out there in front of them, because I think they would do quite well with it.
Yeah,
absolutely. I've done something very similar, Roger, with 5th grade. And even thinking of my preschoolers now, it kind of made me even think back to the warm up that we did, and just taking time to look closely at an image with those younger kids and help build that language together, and then create something together. And then, like Roger said, kind of like ease off as you move forward. So I totally think it can be morphed for a variety of different ages, for sure.
And that helps us cover Addie's question, which was in the chat. I love this. How do you think it can be implemented at younger ages? And you just gave a great example, Lauren. Marilyn, do you have any other suggestions about implementation strategies for younger learners?
No, I like the idea of kind of like Roger said, of, introducing them to choices, more and more choices, but maybe initially, giving them a handful of artworks to choose from. That makes a lot of sense.
I will add in too, the more that you look at artwork, especially in the younger grades, the more that you look at artwork and build that community of, similar to what Marilyn has with her high schoolers, but that brave space, that safe space for students to say what they're thinking without there being a right or wrong answer. I mean, again, I'm just tying it back to that warm up, but as people are sharing things out, we're all learning from that. And then we're all noticing new and different things. And so once you get to that point where you've practiced that enough and you've built that environment and that culture where, you can share out things that you notice and wonder, and then you start creating your own things, and then you start sharing your own things. So it's just that repetition of making that a common practice in your classroom as well, that helps, especially with the younger grades, getting more active and involved in that.
Marilyn, would you tell us a little bit about your mindset with this activity? This is something that you do because your kids get into it. You set up to do this because it was a way to use the arts in your classroom. You use this because it's a very specific way of doing arts integration, where you're matching the standards that you have with the standards of something in the arts, and you're trying to advance both of them at the same time. What's some of your thinking when you use this?
I would say primarily I'm always on the lookout for creative writing opportunities. I'm constantly working against an ideal of academic writing. And by the time I get juniors, they've been tested to death on academic writing and things like that, or that, prescribed structures for writing. And so whenever I can pull in poetry or short memoir pieces or anything that's a little that is more creative, I can. And then I feel like the ekphrastic poetry just turns that dial even more to, yes, we're writing creatively and we are observing creative work. So that's really where I come from initially, is just trying to infuse more creative projects, because we do such a great job of turning them off to writing in education with all of the testing on academic structures. And so I've got to work against that for kids to come alive to the idea of writing, and to even leave my classroom with a positive attitude about what we do in there all the time. So it really is, it's the
Thank you
creativity.
for sharing that. That's a really fresh perspective on that.
Go ahead, Maggie.
So I frequently use humor, especially with like 5th and 6th graders, where they could be a little bit irreverent and connected to like Shel Silverstein or Jack Valetsky. Is that how you pronounce his name? And they, those poets are just, they're irreverent. And so many of the kids who were reluctant to get even into poetry at all really react to humor, irony, exaggeration, all those, they really got it. They get into it at all different levels. And the classroom teachers said, after seeing some of the artwork that generated from these poems, they said, you opened me up to some of these kids that I've never seen them create like this or even think like this before.
Yeah, I really appreciated when you said that earlier, Marilyn, too, that especially that one boy that there's always a surprise. And I think that's what's so exciting about arts integration, is that once you start doing it, just seeing what students can do. Like, we don't always give them enough credit for what they're capable of and what they can think about and what they can do. And this is just that perfect example of just letting them go and just bringing that joy back. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Is there ever any effort to collaborate with the visual arts teacher or music teacher or theater teacher in some of your efforts with the kids, with teaching them?
I wish I could say yes, we have done this, but it's really hard to do that. I don't know. I have good intentions, and then it seems like so often it doesn't ever come to fruition. Yeah, we talk a lot, the teachers, and I guess it's just really hard to merge those curricula together. This is like probably I know art teachers will see this work coming out of the kids, or they'll hear the kids talking about their poetry, and they do appreciate that, art is being discussed outside of their classroom, just as they discuss other areas too.
Yeah, I would. I mean, as a former art teacher, I would be great if the kids came to my room and said, "Oh, Mr. Tobias, can you teach us any more about that painting Stag at Sharkey's?"
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That
alone is a positive.
Agreed. Tom, I wrote the same thing down in one of my many post-it notes of how, like, once they create the poetry, could the students mix up their poems and have another student create a visual art representation, and then compare what they looked at versus what they created using
that's cool,
what they know about the lines and the details from the poem, and kind of tying it back. So it would be super interesting to see how it could evolve.
And another thing about when students approach poetry, they often have a mental construct that it has to be a this, or what are the rules, or what are the structural elements.
Right.
And one of the things that was especially fulfilling, Marilyn, about what you shared is that these poems look different. Everyone looks different, from the structure to the rhyme scheme or lack thereof. to the word choice. And for students who have been conditioned to follow a set of rules to get something right, it's just really freeing. And
Right.
I would think that your strategy for introducing it, having everyone write about a single piece of work, a common piece of work, also opens up the possibility that, oh, you mean that person's expression is okay and that person's expression is okay.
Yeah, right,
That
right.
just helps, as Lauren guided us earlier, providing that safe space for that expression.
Yeah.
To that end, are there reluctant learners in there that refuse to write a piece of poetry, or does everybody get on board?
Everybody gets on board. I might need to sit down with somebody and kind of help them get started. Do that all the time. That's common because kids just really struggle with words sometimes. So, or you can have them, make a list poem. Look at this painting and write down the things you see in it, kind of like what we did earlier, or just colors, make it a list of the colors in this painting. And then, if someone's struggling, or if they're an IEP student, that's a way to get their poem started, or that can be their poem, just a list of the colors in this painting.
Wonderful.
Yeah, list poems are great.
So just the potential for engagement
Yeah.
is a huge plus.
Well, I just want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we're getting kind of close to the end here. But I do really appreciate all your thoughts and the dialogue we got to share. Before we end, just a few more housekeeping items. Let's see here. So our next main event will be next month, obviously, February 27th, again at 4:30. We hope you all can join us. This is going to be done by Leslie Lawson, who's a reading specialist. And it's likely that it will be less conversational based and more just kind of hands-on based, and with the goal of you being able to kind of walk away and try something the very next day in your classroom. So we really hope you can join us for that. If you need or want a continuing ed certificate, please reach out to Phyllis at director@moaae.org, and she will be happy to get that for you. And as always, we're a nonprofit organization, so if you are able to make a donation, we would greatly appreciate it. And I am going to drop a survey link into the chat. Like Phyllis said, I'm going to start taking over these main events, and would love and appreciate all your feedback, because this is really about what's going to benefit you and our network of arts integration teachers and instructors. So please feel free to send me an email, or if you know of somebody that would be a great presenter, or if you would like to be a presenter, please reach out. But I had a lovely time with you guys tonight. I hope you enjoyed your time with us. Marilyn, thank you so much for sharing your work. That was amazing. And I hope to see you all next month.
Thank you.